She was just another quiet trucker, until she noticed something wrong with a parked rig. 2 men, no plates, a military-grade shipment. She didn't have backup or a badge. Just her instincts. What would you do if the CIA turned their back? And the only way to stop a weapons deal was with cones, radios, and fellow truckers. The engine rattled with a faint but persistent knock, just loud enough to crawl under Red Morgan's skin. She eased her Kenworth into the far side of Sundown Truck Plaza, a roadside rest stop like any other, tucked behind a row of gas pumps and a blinking "Open 24 hours" sign that hadn't worked right since the late 90s. The Nevada heat hadn't quite lifted, and the air shimmered off the blacktop like it was alive. Red, Rebecca to almost no one anymore, cut the engine and let the quiet settle in. She adjusted the faded military cap on her head, its fabric soft from years of wear, the embroidered insignia long since bleached to ghostly threads. Without it, she looked younger, softer. She didn't like that. Sliding down from the cab, her boots hit the pavement with practiced weight. Every move she made was controlled, deliberate, like a soldier on unfamiliar terrain. She scanned the lot. 6 rigs parked, 3 motorhomes, 1 silver SUV near the edge of the property, facing away from the store. She shook off the thought, grabbed a crescent wrench from the side compartment, and ducked under the hood. That knock in the engine had started 2 exits ago, and she didn't like guessing games when it came to her truck. Her fingers worked quickly, almost mechanical, tracing the source with quiet precision. 15 minutes later, drenched in sweat and half covered in grease, she closed the hood just as headlights cut across the lot. Another truck had arrived, older model, dull black paint, no logo. It moved slowly, almost too carefully, and parked 3 spots down from hers. Red noticed what wasn't there before she registered what was. It had no visible identification, plates, or numbers, and the driver and passenger, 2 stocky men in work jackets despite the heat, spoke briefly in a language that caught her ear. It sounded Eastern European, something short and coded. Her body didn't tense. Years of training had taught her to hide reaction, but something in her chest coiled tight. They exited the cab, walked around to the rear, and one of them ducked under the trailer. A few minutes later, they walked into the store without a glance toward her. Red stood still a moment longer, then moved. She strolled past the suspicious rig, her eyes flicking over it. What she saw made the hairs on the back of her neck stand up. The undercarriage was clean, too clean. There were weld marks in places they didn't belong. She recognized the shape of a shielded compartment beneath the floor, a method used to transport tech, weapons, or cash without triggering scans. A method she'd personally signed off on during her CIA years. A low hum filled her ears, a memory from her last mission, a botched raid overseas, a family caught in crossfire, a young girl she couldn't forget. Red walked past the truck and into the store, her demeanor unchanged. She grabbed a bottle of iced tea and walked to the register. Behind the counter was a tall, thin kid, early 20s, bored, scrolling through his phone. "You've got a mechanic here?" she asked, her voice low and neutral. The kid didn't look up. "Bay's open till 9. Tyrell should be in the back." "You break down." "Just routine." "Thanks." Red stepped back out, glancing once toward the black rig. The 2 men were still inside the store. She turned toward the service bay. The garage door was open. Inside, kneeling beside an engine block, was Tyrell. He was wiry, with long arms and a sweat-streaked bandana wrapped tight over his hair, grease up to his elbows. He looked up as she approached. "You need something? I heard you're the guy who doesn't strip threads." He smirked. "That depends on the thread. What's the issue?" Red described the knock in her engine, then added, "Not urgent. I'll handle it if you're swamped." "Nah, bring her in. I'll take a look." As she moved her truck toward the bay, she noticed the SUV again. Still parked, engine running now. Windows tinted too dark for Nevada legal standards. Definitely watching. Tyrell slid under her hood with a flashlight while Red leaned against the wall, arms crossed. The kid was good. Confident but not cocky. After a few minutes, he stood up. "Bad mount near the fan belt. You patched it clean, though. You former military." Red tilted her head. "Why? You work like someone who doesn't guess." She didn't respond. Tyrell shrugged and started cleaning his hands. Did a semester of mechanical engineering before my dad passed. Army. After that, I figured I'd learn by doing. Guess we all take different roads. That gave her pause. She almost said something. But just then, a familiar ringtone buzzed in her vest pocket. A throwaway phone. She walked outside out of earshot. Gary, she said, no greeting. On the other end, Gary Lou sounded older, tired. Still keeping tabs on backroad ghosts, huh? I need intel. 80 corridor. Something's wrong in Sundown Plaza. There was a pause. You always did have good timing. There's been chatter. A missing shipment of small arms, likely ex-military, changing hands through modified rigs. Customs missed it. We didn't. But here's the problem. Let me guess. No official action. Correct. Washington doesn't want dirt on its hands if this goes sideways. I'm not asking for permission, Gary. Just confirmation. Another pause. Then here it is, you're sitting on something real. But you're on your own, Red. The agency won't touch this. No ops. No eyes in the sky. Understood. And Red? If you run smart. They're not amateurs. She hung up and slid the phone back in her vest. The sky had darkened a shade, and the SUV had moved closer to the store. Red exhaled. This wasn't a coincidence. It wasn't paranoia. It was something she'd seen in a dozen countries, in the weeks before everything went bad. She turned slowly, scanned the lot, and walked back to Tyrell. I'm gonna need your help with something. Tyrell had questions, but he knew better than to ask them all at once. After Red's vague request for help, she'd returned to her truck and spent nearly 20 minutes pulling wires from behind her dash. Whatever she was doing, it wasn't standard driver maintenance. Tyrell had worked with paranoid haulers before, guys who rigged CB jammers or installed extra GPS trackers, but this was different. He stood just outside the bay, wiping sweat from his brow with the back of his wrist. The sun had dipped behind a cloud bank, and the plaza lights were starting to flicker on, casting long amber shadows across the lot. The suspicious black rig remained untouched. The SUV hadn't moved again, but something about the whole place felt coiled, like a spring waiting to snap. Tyrell was about to head back inside when he heard the low rumble of an approaching semi. The sound wasn't unusual, but this one had a particular growl. A throatier pitch, customized muffler maybe. He glanced toward the entrance. A maroon Peterbilt rolled in slow and deliberate. At the wheel sat a man built like an oil drum, solid, square, and unmoved by much. His face was all hard edges, framed by a salt and pepper beard. When he parked, he didn't cut the engine right away, just sat there for a moment, staring across the lot toward the black rig. Then he climbed out, boots hitting the pavement with weight and memory. Charles Alvarez didn't speak to anyone as he made his way to the fuel station. But Red, standing at the edge of the lot, noticed how his gaze lingered a second too long on the suspicious truck, and how his posture, alert but casual, matched something she recognized. She approached him as he returned from prepaying for diesel. Evening, she said. Calm. Neutral. Charles grunted. Evening. She nodded toward the black rig. That one catch your eye too? He hesitated. Saw one like it. Years ago. Same model, same matte finish. Different plates, or none, actually. He looked her in the eye for the first time. Why do you care? Because I've seen one like it too. In Kosovo, Afghanistan, and again last year in Odessa, Texas. Her tone didn't change. Only those were government-backed. This one feels different. He didn't blink, but the corners of his mouth shifted. In caution. I lost 2 friends, Charles said. Back in 18. Took a rush job, cash load. No questions asked. Told me it was medical equipment heading to El Paso. They never made it past Las Cruces. You think this is connected? I don't guess. I remember. They stood there, in the quiet margin between streetlight and shadow, 2 strangers aligned by something darker than shared work. Inside the garage, Tyrell watched from the doorway, arms crossed. Something serious was unfolding, and he hated being the last to know. Red turned back to him and motioned. Bring out what you built earlier, she said. The short-wave jammer. You said it was just a backup precaution. Now it's not. Tyrell disappeared inside and returned moments later with a small, boxy unit built from scraps of radio parts and old CB equipment. Red inspected it quickly, then handed it back. "You've got a good eye," she said. "You'll help monitor communications tonight. Block their backup signals if they try to call out." He swallowed hard. "So we're doing this?" She looked over at Charles, who was now adjusting tie-downs on his trailer like he hadn't just admitted he suspected a multinational arms smuggling ring in the lot next to them. "Yes," she said. "We are." Still, the plan needed more than 3 people. Almost 8 p.m., Linda rolled in. Her truck, a massive silver Freightliner with twin antennas, was blasting classic soul from a rigged stereo. She pulled up next to Red's cab and climbed down wearing a bright yellow tank top, aviator glasses, and a CB mic still clipped to her collar. She didn't look like anyone's first choice for a covert op. But Red had heard her once coordinate a 6-truck convoy through a sandstorm in Utah using only hand signals and hacked radio channels. Linda looked around, took one glance at the quiet black truck, and snorted. "So this is what I get for showing up for poker night?" Red smiled. Change of plans. In a few words, she laid it all out. The suspicions, the compartment under the trailer, the SUV that hadn't left its spot in several hours, the men speaking in code and disappearing into the store for far too long. Charles backed her up. Tyrell asked questions. Linda nodded throughout. "So we're doing a sting without badges or bullets," Linda said. "We're doing it with cones, jammers, and timing," Red replied. The next hour was spent planning. They mapped out vehicle positions, traffic redirection points, and blocking maneuvers. Tyrell would monitor signal activity from the service bay. Linda would intercept CB chatter from anyone within a 10-mile radius. Charles would shadow from his rig with dashcams rolling. Red would handle the confrontation. They didn't have time for second-guessing. The plaza lights flickered again, twice, then steadied. It was nearly nightfall, and from the store, the 2 men finally emerged. They walked with purpose but no urgency, back to their truck. One of them lit a cigarette. The other glanced toward Red's cab, then quickly looked away. Red's hands were steady. Her mind wasn't racing, it was calculating. Because everything she'd been running from had finally caught up to her in a dusty corner of Nevada. And this time, she wasn't going to run. By 9 p.m., the sundown truck plaza had gone quiet. The coffee inside the convenience store had long burned down to sludge. The soda machines whirred on low, and the glow of the overhead sodium lights painted everything in dull amber. For anyone passing through, it looked like just another sleepy night on the edge of nowhere. But to Red Morgan and her team, it was a pressure cooker counting down. She sat in her cab, eyes moving over the clipboard in her lap, hand-drawn diagrams, radio call signs, signal timing. Every detail mattered. Every piece of improvisation had to hold. There would be no second chance. Her voice crackled through the private channel. "Everyone in position?" One by one, the replies came in. Charles, westbound shoulder. Dash cams live. Tyrell, signal jammers hot. Sweep shows no outbound pings from the SUV. Linda, on CB channel 23. No chatter yet, just a couple bored drivers arguing about Elvis. Red exhaled slowly and adjusted the earpiece hidden under her cap. She changed clothes, no longer the plain shirt trucker. She now wore a stitched-up field jacket, dark navy with no insignia, no name tag. A ghost uniform, something left behind, repurposed. On the passenger seat beside her sat a weathered Pelican case. Inside, a handheld recorder, a folded map of military surplus transit routes, a burner phone, and her CIA badge. Expired, long deactivated, but still heavy in meaning. She didn't bring it to show. She brought it to remember. Across the lot, Linda's rig rumbled low. She was parked diagonally to block any attempt at sudden escape through the service road. Her CB antenna was linked to a repurposed baby monitor, letting her catch faint analog signals bouncing across channels. Charles kept his headlights off but his hazard strobes primed. He'd maneuver his rig forward the moment Red gave the go signal, cutting off the exit between the diner and the gas pumps. Tyrell, tucked into the bay, hunched over a makeshift signal spectrum readout, the jammer humming beside him. Wires ran to a tall antenna strapped to the edge of a discarded oil drum. Red watched the black rig, still parked, still waiting, and then headlights, A third vehicle crept into the lot, a dark blue utility van, unmarked, its windows completely blacked out, pulled up behind the trailer without hesitation. Target 2 confirmed, Red said quietly. This is it. The men from the black rig emerged, carrying what looked like toolboxes, but Red's eyes narrowed immediately. The weight distribution in their hands was wrong. They weren't boxes. They were lead-shielded containers. From the van, 2 new figures stepped out, also foreigners, slimmer, dressed like telecom workers. One glanced over his shoulder and nodded toward the SUV, which flashed its lights once. Gary was right, Red thought. This was a well-practiced operation, and this was their moment of transfer. She slid from her cab, voice low into the mic. Positions locked. Move on mark. Then she moved deliberately. She wore gloves now, sleeves rolled tight, the reinforced boots of someone expecting trouble. Her fingers brushed the concealed holster under her jacket as she crossed the lot. The exchange was already in motion. One of the smugglers had just opened the back of the utility van. Inside, the gleam of weapons under plastic wrap caught the dull light of the plaza. Red stepped out of the shadows. Hey! She called, sharp and clear. The 4 men snapped to attention, startled. One instinctively reached into his jacket. Red raised her voice again, firmer now. Drop it. He hesitated. Suddenly, with a roar of compressed air, Charles's rig surged forward. Lights off, engine snarling. The men turned, startled, just as the big semi cut off the main drive, grinding to a halt across the asphalt. Simultaneously, Linda's headlights burst to life, blinding them from the opposite angle. Her engine growled like a beast in a cage, pressing in from behind the SUV. One of the smugglers cursed in his language and made a move toward the crates. Red reacted. She drew a sleek, compact sidearm now leveled at center mass. The moment cracked. One of the men lunged toward the van, trying to slam the doors and get away. Red fired. One shot. Tire. Boom, rubber exploded. The van rocked violently as the front passenger side dipped from the blast. The man stumbled. Tyrell's signal jammer kicked on full force, cutting their comms, phones, radios, everything. Red advanced. On your knees. Now. They didn't listen. Another man darted for the SUV, shouting something guttural. But Linda had anticipated it. Her rig swerved. A screech of brakes and tires as the massive trailer blocked the exit with just inches to spare. Trapped. 2 of the men finally dropped to their knees, hands up. One still stood frozen, his eyes darting behind Red, looking for an opening. She saw it coming. A second man rushed her from the left, fast and wide. Red pivoted hard and kicked straight into his leg, catching his knee sideways. He collapsed with a shout. Charles climbed down from his cab, wielding a crowbar he hadn't used in years. He didn't need to swing it. His presence was enough. One more step, he warned, and I'll show you what we do to ghosts on the road. The 4th man, panting, hesitated, then slowly raised his hands. The crates lay between them all now. Red kicked one open, revealing the payload: military-grade rifles, optics, crates of ammo labeled in Cyrillic. Red holstered her weapon, then pulled out her phone and raised it for them all to see. A small red light blinked in the corner of the screen. Live uplink, she said flatly. Secure server. With location metadata. You try to run. This footage hits every federal inbox by morning. The smugglers stared back, breathless. She clicked her mic. Package confirmed. Call it in. Linda opened the CB wide, her voice calm. Unit 7B out of Tonopah. Road obstruction on 93 westbound. Looks like spilled cargo. Might need a hazmat check. It would buy them minutes. Just enough. Red stepped back, the adrenaline still sharp in her blood. That night she wouldn't need to shoot anyone. But they'd remember her. So would whoever sent them. The sirens started faintly, distant lights against the black horizon. Red didn't wait. She climbed back into her rig, heart still pounding, hands steady now. She pulled the gear shift down, turned the wheel and rolled out the way she came. Just a quiet engine, a clear conscience, and the open highway ahead. By the time the second squad car pulled into Sundown Truck Plaza, the night was thick with heat and tension. The black rig sat abandoned under the lot's buzzing lights. The blue van had its back doors pried open, revealing the contents inside. High-caliber rifle components, packed in foam-cut crates, each one unmarked but unmistakably military. Troopers moved in fast, guns drawn, confused but efficient. The smugglers were on the ground, hands zip-tied behind their backs by Charles and Linda, who made it look like they just stopped a shoplifter, not an international arms operation. Red was already gone. Her rig had slipped out between the patrol lights, tires humming westbound toward nothing in particular. She didn't look back. She crossed the Nevada state line before sunrise, the CB radio crackling softly beside her on Channel 19. She let it play. Driver chatter, weather alerts, bad jokes from somewhere near Barstow. It grounded her in the world she'd chosen. One without clear enemies, without orders. But never without purpose. Back in sundown, the aftermath was quiet but telling. Charles Alvarez refused to give a statement. He handed over a small USB drive to the lead trooper and simply said, "Make sure this gets to Homeland Security, and tell them it came from the desert." That's all. The officer tried to press for more, but Charles had already walked away, climbing back into his cab. He didn't owe anyone an explanation. 2 days later, parked at a rest stop near Flagstaff, Charles received an anonymous text with only coordinates. He hesitated, then followed the pin location hours later to an impound yard deep in Arizona. What he found made his throat close. A rusted-out trailer. The same one from the 2018 job that took his friends. Inside, dusty but untouched, were a pair of canvas duffel bags, 2 broken phones, and a metal box. Inside the box, dog tags, a lighter engraved with "To Mike, stay safe," and a picture of 3 men in front of a diner in Albuquerque. He sat there for a long time, engine off, hat in his lap, thinking about them. After all those years, the not knowing was over. It wouldn't bring them back, but it gave their memory a home. Back in Nevada, Tyrell returned to the garage Monday morning, half expecting Red's truck to be there again. It wasn't. Her bay was empty, clean, like she'd never been there at all, until he noticed something under his windshield wiper. An envelope. Inside, a short note, handwritten in sharp block letters. "Tyrell, you've got good instincts. Trust them. You don't need a badge to do the right thing. Thank you for showing up when it counted. This world needs more people like you. R." Beneath the note was a check. Exactly the amount he'd once offhandedly mentioned, covering tuition for the automotive program at the tech school he thought he'd never afford. And beneath that, a dog-eared, out-of-print mechanic's manual on custom diesel retrofitting. Inside the cover, written in red ink, "Never stop learning. Keeps you dangerous." Tyrell didn't say a word. He folded the letter, slid the check into his back pocket, and walked inside the garage. Miles away, in the quiet morning sun, Red drove. Her truck now had a new stereo, one Tyrell had installed the day before the operation. It still had his fingerprint smudges on the volume dial. On the seat beside her sat a notebook, filled with backroad routes, safe stops, and old agency contact frequencies she hoped never to need again. She reached for the CB mic and pressed the button. "Breaker 19, this is Redbird. Anyone out there looking for a clean mile marker?" The channel came alive. A trucker near Sacramento chimed in with road conditions. Another offered weather updates out of Colorado. She smiled. She was not here to be seen, but she was always watching and listening, and, if necessary, she would be ready to act. Because sometimes the people who disappear are the ones who show up when it matters most. This story reminds us that courage doesn't always wear a badge. Sometimes, it wears grease-stained jeans and drives alone into danger. What would you have done in Red's place? Let us know in the comments below. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more untold journeys here on Embrace the Journey. See you in the next video.